Okay. Hi, everyone. Welcome to A Girl in Love with Tech podcast. My name is Rachel Rabo. I'm a Microsoft Learn Student Ambassador, a Power Platform developer, and a Dynamics 365 CRM developer. This podcast episode is streamed live on LinkedIn, on YouTube, and also on Twitter. And also, you can get the recorded episodes on Anchor Podcasts, my YouTube channel, and also on Spotify and Google Podcasts. Don't forget to subscribe and follow everywhere. Yeah. So, our special guest for today is Michael Roots. We've been we've been talking online since last year. We've been talking online since last year, I think early last year.
Yeah.
And today he's going to be talking to us about Power Platform Administration and how you can become one. Hi, Michael Roots.
Hi. Yeah, exactly. Power Platform Administration and Governance. Interesting
Yeah,
topics.
yes, it is definitely because a lot of people see it as a very advanced part of Power Platform. Yeah,
Well, kind of, but we are getting ahead of ourselves.
yeah. Okay, so
First, let me introduce myself real quick.
yeah, sure.
Okay, hi everyone. First of all, thanks for having me. That's great.
Yeah, thank you.
Um, and as you just said, my name is Michael. I'm Michael Roth from Germany. I work as a Power Platform consultant and solution architect at Avanade. And I'm in the tech industry for around 9 years now, I guess.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, it's quite some time actually. I don't know how this happened, but time flies. Time flies if you have fun.
Yeah, yeah.
And I like to add that I don't have a tech background actually. I come from the educational science area,
Okay.
and around 9 years ago, I started to get more and more into tech, but I don't have this classical tech education that a lot of people in the community have.
Yeah.
Um, Yeah, and I'm in the very lucky position to work with Power Platform governance and administration, which I consider the most fun topics in Power Platform, but sometimes feel kind of alone with that. Yeah, idea.
Yeah. Okay, that's nice. Okay, for the persons listening to this podcast episode and they want to know what is Power Platform Administration. So,
Yeah.
what is Power Platform Administration?
Well, yeah. The I would like to start with the tasks that an administrator have actually.
Okay.
And if you are a Power Platform administrator, you have the more or less the overall task is to protect your organizational data through
Yeah.
several layers of access management. Let it be security roles, environments, data loss prevention policies. So protect your organizational data. That is it. Is the
Okay.
one part. And the other part is make sure that the platform is working well and that there are no issues and nothing
Okay.
is offline suddenly.
Yeah.
And I usually like to categorize the tasks into 4 categories. That is the securing part, so secure the platform, then
Okay.
monitor the platform, so see what's
Yeah.
going on right now, then
Okay.
alert and act. So
Okay.
try to get, if there are issues, to get an alert and then act accordingly. And then the
Yeah.
deployment is also a very important part for the administrators. That means if
Okay.
makers and citizen developers have developed an app flow, some kind of Power Platform solution, make sure that you deploy it in the right environment on your platform.
Okay.
And
That's
that are
cool.
the main task of an administrator, to make sure that everything runs smoothly, more or less.
Yeah. Yeah, that's an amazing explanation. I love the way you broke it down. It's an amazing explanation. There's another question I have to ask you. I love your nails.
Thanks.
Yeah. Okay, there's another question I have to ask you. I've seen your story on your like what you said on not starting with a non-technical background, and you also got to know about Power Platform. So with getting from starting from a non-technical background and educational background to Power Platform, and
Mm.
now being so interested in Power Platform administration because I see your post everywhere on administration and governance. So how did you get to know about it, and what built your interest?
Yeah. Well, sometimes it's a little bit embarrassing to say that, but I started with when I first started with Power Platform. Coming from a non-technical background, I started with very easy flows. I'm not sure if I told you this. My first flow that I ever built was a tea timer, where I just pressed a button on my phone, and 3 minutes later I got a notification. So a two-step flow.
Wow, that's nice. Yeah.
It was the first one. And I got better over the time, and I developed some apps, mostly Canvas apps, and some bots and stuff like that. But then I realized that, especially in an organization where other developers and Power Platform specialists were working, there are a lot of people, especially with the technical background, they were much more advanced than I am, and they're much faster.
Yeah.
So I had a steep learning curve, how to get into the whole tech thing, and I realized sometimes it takes me 2 weeks to develop something where somebody else would do this in, I don't know, 4 days or something. So, which is just fair. We have our strengths and weaknesses, and this is absolutely okay. But then I realized, why should I struggle so hard in developing something that others are clearly better than I am? So maybe I can see where my strengths are. And since I'm coming from the educational science background, where I worked a lot with people, in the beginning often with change management, so I know how to talk to people, I guess. And that's kind of what I see right now in the administration and governance part, where I work with the IT to develop rules and regulations and guidelines to help secure the platform and transport and communicate those rules and guidelines to the user and the makers. That was my transition to work more with the management of the platform, the administration of the platform, rather than developing flows and apps myself. I still can do that, not very much advanced, but yeah.
It's nice. Yeah.
And then I realized this is way more easy. That comes more naturally to me than actually doing the developer thing.
Yeah. That's actually nice because a lot of persons, when they see they are going so slow in their journey, it becomes they become down about it. They
Yeah, it
think so
can be
much about
frustrating.
it. Yeah, it can be frustrating, right? That's true. That's the right word. Yeah.
Absolutely. I've been there.
Yeah. I'm great, but I'm great. Yeah. Okay. So another question I have to ask you, like I think there's a confusion between Power Platform administration and Power Platform governance.
Yeah.
Before I ask you the next question, I want to ask, what is Power Platform governance?
Yeah. So on the one hand, we have the administration, which is manage your platform so that it runs smoothly and there are no security threats. Governance itself is other rules, regulations, and guidelines that you even technically put up so that your business user and your maker can work with the platform in an efficient way while also complying with IT and business compliance standards. So don't break the rules. So you put up the rules and you say what are the makers allowed to do and what they're not allowed to do, and then you see that you can come up with a technical way to ensuring those rules and enforcing those rules. But every time I say enforcing, it sounds a little bit negative, like you are not allowed to do this and you're not allowed to do that. But in fact, it's something that helps the users, because if you have endless possibilities, you don't know where to start and what to do and what not to do, what might be dangerous and what might be not a good idea. But if you put up regulation and rules, then it actually helps the makers to understand what would be a good idea. Because what I always consider to be part of governance is the communicational part of governance. If you have a set of rules, what is allowed and what's not allowed, you need to tell your makers what they are allowed to do and what not. And that is where you can really make this distinction very clear that let's just say I have 3 different environments, and one environment is strictly for pro developers, where they have no guidelines. They can use every connector, for example. And I have a citizen developer environment where I just have a few connectors for them to test and to train and to see what happens. And even if they build something that goes wrong, no productional data is harmed, so they can feel completely safe to learn how the rules are and what's working and what's not working. And that is where I think governance can actually help most makers and citizen developers in order, but not restrict them.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's really amazing. I think there's another question I have to ask you. Like, there's a lot of organizations out there or businesses who they just newly adopted Power Platform, and they have no idea about these things you just spoke about. They have no idea of how to manage their environment, of how to govern their environment, how to set rules, how to make things easier for their builders, for their makers. So, what do you tell them? How do you think they can start?
First of all, I would say it's not really the organizational's fault that they don't have a governance from the beginning, because,
Yeah.
and I do have to blame Microsoft a tiny bit here.
Yeah.
What they say in their marketing strategy is always like, it's super easy, everybody can do it, and
Okay.
just try to try around and click a little bit, and then you come over the flow with an app, something like
Yeah.
that. And this obviously, many users hear that and they do that, and that's absolutely okay. And in
Okay.
the beginning, when Power Platform became a thing for citizen developer as well, the governance possibilities were kind of limited, but they're
Okay.
growing now. And what I see now, especially last year, I've seen a lot of organizations adopting Power Platform and playing around. They're developing
Okay.
flows and apps and bots. And this year, or especially the last, I would say 6 months or something, I see many organizations coming to me and ask, okay, now we have like 500 flows and
Okay.
1,000 apps. What do we do? It's a mess.
Yeah.
And this is I would say, the way the Power Platform is introduced and marketed. This is kind of a natural way. First, you try it
Okay.
out, then you got like a gazillion of flows, and then you don't see what's important, what's not important anymore, and then you start to adopt governance. Initially, it should be the other way around, yes,
Yeah.
but often it's not. So that would be my first thing to say to those organizations: don't panic, you are not alone.
Yeah.
And basically, I would say how to start is I think it's the very first thing, and that I have this with every customer, honestly, every single one, is I ask my customers, what are you using the platform for?
Okay.
So what's your vision behind the platform? Do you want to enable citizen development, or do you just want your IT departments and developer to develop things internally faster? Or do you
Okay.
want both? Do you want the citizen developer and the pro developer or code first developer to work together in like fusion teams? That would be
Okay.
another approach. So
Yeah.
ask yourself, what do you want to do with the platform? And then from there, if you have this idea, you can start developing an environment strategy. Therefore,
Okay.
you should need what environments are, what they're used for,
Yeah.
and what the whole thing is. And from there, it's a pretty much forward way, actually, from environment strategy to data loss preventions to security
Yeah.
groups, and coming up with a dedicated role for the administrator, obviously, because
Okay. Yeah.
another thing that I see in many organizations is there are people who are interested in Power Platform and get a lot of experience, and
Okay.
then when you're at the wrong time, at the wrong meeting, then you are suddenly becoming a Power Platform administrator because you know your way
Yeah.
around the platform. But
Yes.
usually this comes on top of your daily work, and this Power Platform administration is not something that you do like as a side gig. This is a full job.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is.
So,
Yeah.
but where to start and where to gain good information in how to start, there are, I would say, two things.
Okay.
The PowerCat team published a Power Platform governance white paper,
Okay.
and maybe we can put the link somewhere in somewhere.
Yeah.
This is actually a good overview of how to start, and of course, my own blog.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. You post a lot of Power Platform administration and governance. Yeah. Your blog is a very good place to start. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but yeah,
I,
it's never too late to start. That's
yeah.
maybe the
It's
important
not.
lesson.
Yeah, I have another question to ask you. Like, Power Platform administrator is administration. Is people think about it like it's something that is very big, that you have to have so much knowledge in order to explore it. So before asking it, I want to ask something first. There's something you mentioned when you talked about it. So can somebody go through, like, try being a Power Platform administrator and get a role as a Power Platform administrator in a company?
Yeah. So you mean technically or organizationally? Because
Like organization, like they get a job, they get to apply to a company, and that particular role they are applying
oh,
for is a Power Platform
that is
administrator.
that is a very good question, actually, and I've never seen a job offering for we are looking for a Power Platform administrator.
Yeah,
I've never seen that before.
same
Um,
with me. Yeah.
yeah, that's a good point. I never noticed that. Um, but every organization needs one.
Yeah, they do. They do.
And quite often that's the point. The regular administrator team or administrator they have in organizations, they have to do it. But the difficulty for them is that they usually don't know their way around the Power Platform.
Okay.
And this is some lack of knowledge that would be really helpful to have when
Yeah.
being Power Platform administrator. But I do have to investigate why there are
Okay.
no job offers for Power Platforms. That's a good point. I will need
Yeah.
to take that with me.
Yeah, sure. That's nice. Okay, I also have another question. Like, how can one, I know that when you're looking, especially when you're in the job market or when you're already working in a particular role, you you have to try to bring value to your
Mhm.
current role or to your company.
Mhm.
So how can you, with Power Platform Administrator not being a one, just one particular role, you have to be a consultant or you have to be a developer in order to have this knowledge. So how can you become a good Power Platform administrator?
What you should know, right? What is
Yeah,
the thing that you should know? So, of course, it helps if you have developed some flows, maybe an app, if you
yeah,
know how the tech works.
yeah,
Um, Especially not around. Let's stick with Canvas apps, for example. You don't have to
okay,
know the syntax and the functionality by heart. That is not the important part. But if you ever shared a flow or a Power App, for example, then you know that you can pick many people and share it with them,
yeah,
and there's a good starting point. So if you know the single services, the 5 that we have now, if you know them at least a bit, you should have worked with them. That helps absolutely.
okay,
And then it's a lot about what you should know is, of course, the Power Platform Admin Center, because all
yeah,
the information and all the settings that you have are in there. And this can be a lot because there are a lot of settings.
hmm,
But
yeah,
for a starting point, it's about Power Platform environments. What are environments? How do they work? Why should I have one?
yeah,
Security groups. So this is
okay,
more or less the M365 groups
yeah,
thing.
true,
There are many different groups like the M365 groups, Azure AD groups, security groups, stuff.
yeah,
But groups in general, how do they work and what benefit can they bring, especially in combination with environments
okay,
and data loss prevention policies. If you know these 3 things, then that is a good starting point, actually.
okay,
And now I'm thinking of something that was published by Microsoft. The North Star architecture, landing zones. And I realize I'm just throwing around words. Um, the reference architecture and landing zones for Power Platform. And
okay.
that is something that is a concept that they published. It's an example on how to
Yeah,
build
can
your
I get the
environment,
link to that?
especially.
Can I get the
Absolutely,
link
you
to that?
can.
Yeah,
Yes. Um, so this is an example how you can form your environment structure and what you need to consider and what are good practices and what not. So this is really interesting information
yeah,
that is helpful for anyone to see what's inside administration and governance and what you should know. Because if you read this, you stumble upon all those
okay,
terms: environments, DLPs,
okay,
and security roles, ALM,
yeah,
all those things.
okay.
So this is a really helpful article to read, actually.
Okay, that's amazing. I've just posted on the, yeah, let me just get that link and post it on the comments. Okay, I think we have a question. And Dave is asking, he said, what is your standpoint on Power Platform administration role? Is it in-house or outsourced to a partner? Yeah.
Since I'm working for a Microsoft partner, maybe the natural answer or the expected answer would be outsourced, but I would always say in-house, always,
Yeah,
because an in-house administrator knows the business units, knows the important people, not important people, but the people who
yeah,
may become important sooner or later. And
okay,
the internal administrator knows the internal processes, how an organization works, and this is
yeah, true.
for me as coming from
Yeah,
outside. I always have to get a feeling how this organization ticks, how they work, and this is something that is hardly described. Usually, you have to experience that. And somebody who's working inside the company knows that usually.
Yeah, that would be actually easier. Yeah, right,
Yeah.
that's true.
So,
To be easier. Okay, I have another question to ask. Is there some special certifications, like Microsoft certifications, you need to take as a Power Platform administrator to be a
no,
Power Platform administrator?
no, unfortunately not. Um, One that comes very close is the PL600 for the solution architect, because you
Okay,
think a lot about, well, the landscape or the environments and how it should be connected to the Dataverse. Yeah, that
yeah,
comes kind of close, but this is a very advanced one. I haven't done it myself yet.
okay,
Um, Otherwise not, but there is something, or there was something like the in a day trainings from Microsoft, like app in a day, flow in a day,
yeah, yes, I
they
do.
they do have a concept that's called governance in a day.
Okay,
You hardly find this in the internet anymore, but it's in the GitHub repository from the PowerCat team, and maybe I can
okay,
give you the link as well,
yeah,
because
that would be
sometimes
perfect. Yeah,
it's hidden.
yeah,
But if you just you just get the instructor materials and the materials for the attendees, but you can get a lot of information
okay,
from there, like in which direction
yeah,
to look, what's important and stuff.
yeah,
This is also good as well, but
okay.
no official
Certification,
certification yet.
yeah,
I hope one day. That would be really nice.
yeah, sure. Fingers crossed.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I have another question to ask. There's something you mentioned about you not coming from a technical background. So I want to ask, do you have to come from a special background or technical background in order to know Power Platform administration? And also, do you have to have a fundamental knowledge? Do you have to have knowledge in Power Platform in order to be a Power Platform administrator?
Yes, I would say so.
Okay.
Because I see that even sometimes with non-Power Platform or regular administrators, when they do know how a proper deployment process works, for example, with a proper source control and the proper pipelines, sometimes in Power Platform it works a little bit differently. And then it's good to know, for example, what happens if you, let's say, share a flow or an app with other people, that you can share it with groups, and then you
Yeah.
should be aware of the group concept, for example, or just the fact that every solution you build in Power Platform is always restricted to the user context, because you
Okay.
don't when you build a flow, you don't have to think about authentication, for example, because
Yeah.
the flow
Yeah.
always runs in the user context. This is
Okay.
something that is unusual and very unique to the Power Platform, so you should be aware of that. Power Platform knowledge
Okay.
absolutely helps with that. Yeah.
Okay, that's amazing. So, if you're listening to this podcast, you want to be a Power Platform administrator, or you're interested in learning the skills of being a Power Platform administrator, you have to have an understanding of Power Platform, because being a Power Platform administrator, you're actually working on Power Platform. So it's going to be weird if you don't understand Power Platform. Yeah. So there's one thing I want to talk about. The last question I have to ask is I understand that a lot of people are scared when they hear about Power Platform administration or being a Power Platform administrator. They think about, okay, it's such a very big thing that I have to explore. I don't know if I can. So what do you say to those persons?
Yes, you
Yeah,
can. Yeah, the point is, and I get this because I had the same idea. That is a lot, and I need to learn so many things and so many different things.
yeah,
But on the other hand, now that I focus on the administration, I don't have to push myself so hard on development anymore. It's
okay,
just a different field. So, and the good thing is, the Power Platform administration and governance documentation from Microsoft and the Microsoft Learn community
yeah,
is pretty good. They are
okay,
pretty up to date, and in the community docs there are even very good examples for best practices and what you could do and what you should do.
okay,
And just have in mind that that this is just a limited field, because coming from administration and governance, you might think about security as well, and then you come
yeah,
to tenant level security, for example, or to
okay,
Teams and Microsoft or M365 governance. But this is a different
yeah,
field. It is somehow connected, like everything in the M365 universe. But
Okay.
if you focus on Power Platform, then you have a pretty explicit role and field of
Okay.
knowledge, actually. And this is manageable, I would say, because I did it, and I'm not the
Okay.
brightest.
Yeah. Everybody has their own. Yeah. It does not really. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. I think I have another question to also ask you. Is that like we talked about organizations that they don't have any idea about Power Platform administrator, being a Power Platform administrator or managing their environment and also governance. So let me say, for instance, there's a person in this organization who actually works with Power Platform, and the person has noticed, maybe through this call or before now, the person has noticed that okay, this organization does not have this, they don't have this, they don't have these things they need.
Mm.
And okay, now I have an idea and I want to explore on it. So how do I tell, as that particular role that I'm doing is actually a Power Platform, maybe a Power Platform consultant or a Power Platform developer, and I've noticed this these shortcomings, I've noticed these things. How do I reach out to the organization to tell them that okay, I can do this for you, I can implement this, I can implement this, especially when they are scared.
Mm. You
Uh,
mean like whom to talk to?
yeah, like who to
Like
talk
how
to.
to, yeah. Um, this is a tricky one because
Yeah.
usually I talk with the IT departments,
Okay.
sometimes maybe a head of IT security or something like this, because usually they have their organizational IT under control. And then comes
Yeah.
Power Platform, and every user starts playing around, and then they realize what's happening over there is not kind of okay, not compliant. So the
Okay.
IT department's asking me, how do I do this?
Okay.
Because they do this in general. But on the other hand, I'm a lot in contact with people who are on the decision maker um,
Okay.
level, because at the very beginning, if you think about how do you want to use the Power Platform, what's your strategy, what's your overall
Yeah.
goal with it, you need to align this with your organizational strategy and goals.
Okay. Yeah.
So when talking about administration and governance about Power Platform in general, I always try to involve the IT, the management, and the end user as well, because
Okay.
the end user know the business processes that they want to automate, for example, or work on. The IT should know how, should be aware about that, and usually is pretty clever in how to make everything secure. And the
Okay.
business decision maker need to align this with the overall strategy. So it is actually a very organizational topic that includes everyone. But
Okay.
the first person to talk to is actually the regular admin, to say, do you know
Yeah.
what's happening here? And very helpful is if you have the possibility to deploy the Center of Excellence Starter Kit,
Yeah.
because then you see what's actually happening on the tenant. I think
Okay.
if I talk to my last 10 customers, 8 of them were pretty convinced that they haven't used Power Platform at all. And then we
Yeah.
opened up the Center of Excellence Starter Kit to see what was really happening, and they
Okay.
were shocked to see that they have multiple Power Pages already online and so many apps and
Okay.
flows, but they weren't aware of it.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
this is helpful, but you can do a similar thing with the admin center actually to get the analytics and insights. If you go
Yeah,
with a
that's true.
regular admin inside and just see
Yeah.
that there are flows and apps, and that helps to see. So maybe we should do something about this.
Yeah, that's perfect. Thank you so much. Okay, I think we do not have any question on the comment section. Okay, so thank you so much, Michael. And for those listening, our next podcast for this month, we have the importance of users' experience in Power Platform. We also have how to utilize Microsoft Designer, and also a senior analyst on Power Platform sharing her experience on working on sharing her experience on working on Power Platform. Yeah. So don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel and follow me everywhere if you want to listen to this upcoming podcast. Yeah. Thank you so much, Michael.
That sounds great. Thanks for having me, and
Yeah.
talk to
Thank
you
you.
soon.
Yeah. Bye, everyone. I think. Okay.